And here, in the recent past, we've had a lot of changes, obviously more changes here in the front office. And I really want our players just to focus on what they have to do on a daily basis to get ready to win a ball game.
Was that mandated by the ownership, or was that your call?
That was my call.
So why keep a guy, though, who is admittedly not instituted all of his system?
Well, it's certainly an organizational effort, and there's some work to do. I need to sit down with Pedro. Obviously, he's experienced the season now with the Chicago White Sox for the first time, and I need to talk about areas that need to be improved. But I do think that the best thing moving forward is to have him at the manager helm, and certainly I'll support him through that, but there are some areas that need to improve.
You wonder why this team stinks. I mean,
no, I don't. I know exactly why they stink.
That was less than a year ago. That was at the end of August of 2023. You knew it. I knew it. I'm not even a Sox fan. And we all knew that Pedro Grifol was not long for the job, should not keep the job. You changed the general manager. You didn't even go on a GM search. Now they feel the need to go on a big manager search. Why did they feel the need to go on a big general manager search? But that's last year's news. So they get the new general manager, then they stop short and they don't hire the new manager. And they tell us less than a year ago because they want stability. And now a year later, you're pulling the rug out again. And now you're changing the manager again. So we all knew he wasn't a good manager. We all knew this wasn't going to work. But somehow, some way, it's the White Sox who are always the last to know. And here they are again. We were talking the other night, Carmen, Jesse, and me. We would run the team better. Honestly, like I'm going to pull a George Costanza because I would know to surround myself with people who understand and do the job better than what they have done over these last several years. And it's remarkable.
Who's the first person you hire?
I would do an extensive search and I'd figure that out. That's for sure. I'd go to the smartest people and I'd talk to them and who they like, and then I'd ask them all.
Will you have any limited parameters with regard to who would be a candidate and who wouldn't?
That's the key, because that's pennies on the dollar to run my team. Don't skimp on the guy who's going to run the team at the top, and give him autonomy to run the team. Don't let the owner meddle. Let's bring in AJ Pierzynski, who does such a great job on Foul Territory. Not only is that just a great podcast, that's now on television as well. They're taking the baseball world by storm. AJ's a fan favorite, of course. A lot of people thought that this could be your future manager. He came out a couple of weeks ago when that rumor was out there. Bob Nightingale. Then we'll play some sound for AJ about that. Let's welcome him in on the CarX Tire and Auto Hotline. AJ, how's it going?
It is going well. Yeah, I never want to see anybody lose their job, obviously. Sucks for people when they get fired, but I think if you look at the totality of his managerialship, Pedro's, I mean, I think it was time, and it was almost like mercy. I mean, you're over 100 games under 500. It didn't look like it was going to get any better anytime soon either.
Are you surprised, AJ, that he wasn't relieved of his duties earlier?
No, I wasn't, because I think they wanted to give him his run. Now, I had heard that it was going to happen a little bit ago from people, but it didn't happen for whatever reason, and no one can seem to figure that part out. But they made the decision to do it when they do it. You don't want to do it on the road. Probably don't want to do it in the middle of a long losing streak, because then the new guy has to come in and answer questions about that. So the losing streak was over. They came back home, and it gets a little boost to the Cubs series this weekend.
AJ, do you have faith that Chris Getz is going to get this right and he's going to be able to turn this thing around?
I hope so. Who else is there? Who else can we have faith in as White Sox fans?
Well, I mean,
Chris Getz is in charge. He's in charge, right? So I certainly hope he gets it right.
Well, we can hope, but like there's the hope, and there's nobody else is going to be able to do it. But then there's the reality of the situation. Do you fully believe in him?
I believe he's in charge, and he's going to make the decision he believes is the best for the organization. People are going to second guess no matter who he hires. If he hired Connie Mack or Joe Torre or whoever you consider, Dusty Baker, whoever you consider the greatest manager of all time, people will still say, well, he's too old or he's too this or he's too that. So he has to go with the decision that he thinks is the best to lead the organization in the right way. They thought it was Pedro a few years ago. Didn't work out. They thought it was Rick Renteria. They thought it was Tony La Russa. They thought it was, Robin Ventura before that. So who is the next guy that can lead this team into the future? The problem is that everyone you talk to around baseball is like, and this is not my words, this is things you read on polls and stuff. The White Sox are lagging behind in a lot of the areas that other teams are jumping ahead of. So who do you find that can jump them to the forefront of stuff and make them be at the front of the baseball world instead of lagging behind?
It's interesting you mentioned that, AJ, because I was just going to ask you, as far as you know, what kind of infrastructure is in place with the White Sox that would help a manager become successful? Is there an infrastructure, in your opinion, that is in place there that is beneficial to somebody coming in?
I don't know. I don't know all that because I haven't been around hardly at all this year. I've been in for one game, I think, this year. I'm actually going to be there starting tomorrow. I'm doing the game on Saturday for Fox. So, I really don't know what they've done. I know they've put in a pitching lab and done some other stuff, hitting labs and all that stuff, which other teams have had for a little while. But, as far as analytics, I think their analytic department is pretty small compared to other teams. But again, you guys would have to dig in because I don't really know that answer. But if I'm the manager, I'm the GM, I want to figure out how to get ahead of it, right? Like the A's were the first analytics team. How do you jump ahead of it? The Rays were kind of the first shift team. The Rays were the first, we're going to do some crazy opener stuff. We're going to try to do this or do that. They just have ideas that were like, this is never going to work. And then all of a sudden every other team does it. And so I think that's what you have to do as an organization. If you're not going to spend a ton of money, you're not going to run a $200+ million payroll. You have to do something outside the box, and you have to figure out what the next big thing is in baseball and lead the charge on it, not try to play catch up all the time.
AJ Pierzynski joining us on Waddle and Silvy on ESPN 1000. All right, so Carmen went to bat for you, Carmen DeFalco. Chris Getz was on the station. I want to play this for you and hear your reaction. This is Carmen with Chris Getz earlier today.
There was a rumor within the last 2 or 3 weeks that someone like AJ Pierzynski was drawing some consideration or was of interest to the White Sox. Based off of the criteria, am I to assume that someone like AJ, while he's very experienced and accomplished big leaguer, he's doing a podcast now, someone like AJ will not be considered?
He does not fit the criteria that we feel like is best fit for the organization.
You don't fit the criteria, AJ.
Okay, so what? What's the criteria?
That's what
Tell
I want to know.
The criteria.
Yeah, right. Well, he said that they want to go outside the organization, and it's got to be. He wants someone who's currently in uniform.
Okay, well, I'm definitely outside the organization. That's for sure. And as far as currently in uniform, I help coach my high school son's team. Does that count as uniform? That worked for Robin Ventura one time.
Sure. Look, it's worked for a lot of guys. It worked. I think Girardi did it when he was not in uniform and went right to being a manager. I think David Ross did the same thing. I think there were many guys who went from the broadcast booth, and catchers, as we know, were the guys who were the most engaged in games. Do you when you hear that, does that anger you? Would you like an interview?
Of course. Why not? Bring it on. Let's go. Why would I not want an interview? I want to see what it's all about. Let's see. Let's find out what the criteria is, right? Let's find out what they're looking for. I'd love to know these things. I've said this today on Foul Territory, that listen, I've called Jerry Reinsdorf. I've had many conversations with Jerry Reinsdorf about, hey, how can I help the organization get better? And he always says, hey, I'll get back to you. And then I never hear back. So it's like, all right, at some point, I'd like to know. I'd like to help the organization. I'm still a White Sox fan. Why? Sometimes I have to question why at this point, but I am. I still root for them. I'm still there. I'm still trying to, want them to do well. Not like I'm rooting against the White Sox. So yeah, I'd love to help the organization in some capacity. So yeah, to hear things like, shut it down right away. How do you know if you don't talk to me?
Would you describe your relationship with the White Sox as good, bad, or somewhere in the middle?
Right now,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's on. I don't know I don't know how you would describe my relationship with the White Sox at the moment. That would have to be I don't know, a White Sox question. Maybe you should get someone else on the air to talk about that. I mean, I have no hard feelings towards the White Sox for everything that we've been through. There's been some things that have come up the last year or so that we've had some conversations about. Everyone knows that I no longer am employed by the White Sox. And that's fine. I get it. I get why. But at the same time, I would love to help the organization get better and make another playoff caliber team and make a deep run in the postseason.
From our standpoint, AJ, you've been very fair, and you've always said that you're coming at this as someone who cares a lot about the White Sox. And as you just said, you're a White Sox fan. You're the guy who led them to a World Series with your other teammates in that clubhouse. You're a hero from a sports standpoint in this town. Do you believe that they have looked at you differently because of your criticism over the last few months?
I think that could be a fair statement. Yeah. I think that definitely would be a fair statement to say that, yes. And I understand it though. I guess you could call me a team when I was an ambassador, I was a team employee, and they didn't like the fact that I didn't say only positive things, that I kind of said some different things. And I felt like, listen, I have another job that pays me a lot more than what the White Sox are paying me. And I'm going to give my opinion on how I feel. And I didn't take personal shots at anybody. I just said that, I wish they would have went outside the organization when they hired Chris Getz and looked at other things, because you have one opportunity. And listen, I like Chris Getz. I played with Chris Getz. I have nothing personal against Chris Getz. So let's make sure that's abundantly clear. But I think if I was running a team, I would want to hear 30 other people, 30 other teams. It's a free shot. You got a free shot to hear 30 other teams' thoughts on how to run a baseball team and what they're thinking and what they believe in and where they're at and what they're looking at in the future. And you get the best and brightest people, and you might pick up a thing or two, and you might hire Chris Getz, and you still hire Chris Getz. You say, hey, man, X team is doing this. We should really think about this, Chris. What do you think? He might go, man, I never thought about it that way. Let's go with that. So That was basically what I said. And listen, I'm happy for Chris that he is the GM. I've had Chris on my show. He answered all the questions and did all the right things. And I commend him for it. But I'm not against Chris Getz at all. I think people think that. I am not. I just think there could have been more diligence done before he was hired. And if he was the right choice, go for it. And I'm happy that he got the job, and hopefully he gets the managerial job right.
This may be a silly question, AJ, because they've won 28 games and they're currently 61 games under 500, which is even hard to say. But is this a good job, or is this just one of 30 and you would never turn down a job as a major league manager, regardless of how bleak the atmosphere may feel?
Well, it is one of 30. Let's not forget that. Right. Now, are you going to get a Hall of Famer, a guy to come out of retirement possibly and take this job? Probably not, because they're going to say, man, this could be a long process to rebuild. So do I want to go through that? Now, can you get an up and coming young coach with energy and a young person and say, all right, man, I can really make this happen? You can probably find a really good person to do that. And I think it's going to take somebody with some patience, some energy and focus, and having, a singular thought with Chris Getz and the rest of the front office on how they can make it happen. But I think, it's one of 30. They don't come around all the time. Mm-hmm. And most of the time when people are offered these jobs, they don't turn them down.
Right. Would AJ the manager be the same as AJ the player, or would you be different as a manager?
No, I'm way different now than when I was a player. Listen, what I was as a player was a cartoon character. What I am as a person is nothing like what I was as a player. And I think people don't understand that, because they just look at the player and they want to say that. So listen, I've said this for a long time. I play differently than what I am as a person. Now, am I opinionated and will I tell people where they stand? Yes. But I mean, listen, when I played, I've said this so many times, I had to play with hate. And so I made up reasons to be mad at people, even if they didn't do anything. And now, listen, I'm 47 years old, and I don't have enough time or energy in my life to go about it. That's one of the reasons I quit playing when I did.
So would you be, like, when you're talking about energy and things like that, would you have the patience for this? Can you still give players today a kick in the ass when they're throwing the ball around?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Okay. Explain.
Yes, you can. You can, but you can do it a different way. You can do it a different way. You don't have to. I don't think this generation of players you scream and yell at and you do all that because I don't think they respond to that. I have 2 teenage kids. I get it. I know how it works now. It's a lot different than what it used to be. But you still have to earn their respect, and you have to have a little bit of a fear factor when you're the manager of a team, because if they don't respect you and they don't fear you at least a little bit, then they'll just walk all over you. I've seen it go both ways. So you have to be able to earn their respect, but you also have well enough communication to where they can come in and talk to you. I don't want to say a father figure, but like someone that they can look up to and say, all right, this guy did this. He's done it. He understands how hard it is, but I can still have a real conversation with him. And I think sometimes that's where people get lost, is that they miss that opportunity to connect with their players on a level. And the ones that are great at it, man, you go in and listen, I get to talk to managers all the time now. And I tell people all the time, I spent more time in a manager's office than anybody, probably in the history of baseball, good or bad, right? But you have to be able to communicate with your players, and it's easier and it's harder said than done, especially, you know, as players get younger, coaches and managers get older. But there is a way to do it. I think the great ones balance that act and make it work.
Let's forget about the managerial position for just a second. We just made you the general manager of this team, okay? What would you do with
Okay.
What would you do with Garrett Crochet? Are you trying to extend him, or are you trying to trade him?
Well, I go to him and say, can we extend you? And if he shoots you down right away, then I trade him and get everything I can for him. He has a chance to bring you 4 or 5 big leaguers that can contribute for 6 to 8 years. Why would you not make that move?
What would be a reasonable contract offer to him, in your opinion?
Oh, man, I'd have to sit down and really look at it. I don't know. I've never really sat down and even thought about something like that, because that's really never been an area where I've had to dig into. But, I mean, you know, listen, Jerry and the White Sox, they don't do 5-year deals, right, for pitchers. So you'd have to start at 4 and 80 and work your way maybe up or down from there.
But you're going to change the way they do business as the
exactly.
GM.
But as long as, you know, if the person above you, if you're the GM, if you're Chris Getz and the person above you says, here's your payroll, you have $120 million, you got to work within those constraints. You can't change their mind.
This, AJ, this is what I said. I said, okay, rip up the last 2 years. He's making $800,000 this year. He's going to get way more in arbitration, but he's still going to be underpaid. Rip up the last 2 years, give him a 5-year deal, but front load it. Next year's payroll is going to be what, $60 million? So if you give him a lot of the contract of the $100 million in the first couple of years, then when you're ready to win in 3-4 years from now, you've got more room with Crochet, and he's still young enough to be great with you.
He won't do that. That's not how baseball contracts work. They're always backloaded. Have you figured that out? So you get the good years cheap, and then you try to trade them to somebody that'll eat the expensive years.
But you just told me you've got to find a way to be on the forefront of something.
I agree.
So
I agree.
So be on the forefront.
I agree, but can you find agents that'll be willing to tell their player, hey, take all the money now, and then you're not going to make anything in the back end? It's going to be it's tough. It's a tough sell. Listen, I agree with what you're saying. Try to do something different. Yeah, go to Crochet and say, hey, here's 5-year 100. You make 60 the first 3.
Yeah.
Or whatever, you know, make 70, 80 the first 3, and you make 20 the last 2, and you're easier to move if our rebuild hasn't worked, right? But is Garrett Crochet going to take that? I would think so. Would his agent take that? I don't know. Would the Players Association accept that? There's so many thoughts that have to go into it. It's not fantasy baseball. That's the other problem, right? If it was fantasy baseball, everyone's like, hey, we should trade this guy for this guy and do this for that. Well, it's real life. And it doesn't work like fantasy baseball.
Maybe we're just beaten down, but I think the kind of the perspective we've had on this show is that you trade Garrett Crochet looking to find someone that can do what Garrett Crochet does, him and others. But then you get on this hamster wheel that when you become a player who's an established player and it's time to pay him, they're not going to pay that guy either. So then they're going to do the same thing again. That's what's so frustrating, AJ.
Well, yeah, but I think that's why you look at like the Rays, right? Every team wants to be the Rays. How do they do it? They win somehow. They're the only team that can win with the payroll consistently that they have. And that's why everybody that walks into the Tropicana field under the Rays, and they breathe the air, someone wants to hire them as a GM or a front office person, right? Because they're like, oh, they breathed at the Rays, so they know what they're talking about. So I don't know. I mean, that's what you have to sit down and look at. You have to dig into your own organization. You have to be a very good self-scouter of what your organization does well, and then try to make that great, and then try to improve the lower ranking things in your organization. And I think it's easier said than done. That's why it's so fascinating when guys are hired for GMs and presidents of baseball operations and managers, because how do they get along? How do they figure this out? And how well can they look in the mirror and say, we don't do this very well, let's change it.
AJ, before we let you go, and I know this is a complex answer, but the White Sox in that Field of Dreams game, Tim Anderson hits the walk-off home run, a nationally televised game against the Yankees, and they're like the darlings of Major League Baseball at that moment. That's the high point. After that, what went wrong and why?
I said this the other day. Who are the 4 best players on that team, position-wise?
Abreu.
Anderson, Abreu, Moncada, Eloy, right? Those are the 4 guys that they were counting on. Abreu's out of baseball. Anderson's out of baseball right now. Eloy just got traded away, and Moncada hasn't played all year. But Moncada and Jimenez probably going to take minor league deals to go somewhere next year. You know, if they get lucky, they'll get a big league deal unless Eloy keeps hitting the way he has. And Abreu and Anderson, Abreu's probably done, and I don't know what Tim Anderson's going to do. But that's your 4 pillars. That was 3 years ago. 4 of those guys are basically out of baseball almost. That's what happened. They either age fast, things turned over, whatever you want to call it. But you can't have guys 3 years after that moment when that was supposed to be the high point and your window was open to win multiple championships or win divisions and all that. And then, 3 years later, they're all gone. That's crazy turnover to me.
Yeah. All I'll say that is this as we let you go, that 20, 21 years ago, Ozzie Guillen didn't fit the criteria either. And
Agreed.
And they picked up the phone and they at least had a conversation, and that conversation led to them hiring him, and that led to an eventual World Series title. So I think it would be smart of the White Sox to do the same.
Well, I appreciate that, and I got to ask old Tommy Waddle. I mean, are the Bears going to be good this year or what? Because I can't go through another winter of watching what I've watched.
It's interesting, AJ. We're going to segue into some Bears conversation here in a minute. And I'll tell you, I'm optimistic. I think down the road for the foreseeable future, they're going to be a good team. Right here in this moment, I'm a little nervous because their offensive line is banged up. Their defensive line is missing a pass rusher. I think the future is bright, but maybe I'm a little itchy and scratchy or too early of a time in the year. But yes, they'll be good this year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you watch Hard Knocks? Did you like it?
I didn't, because I'm in Starkville with my daughter, moving her into her dorm. So when I get home, I'll watch it. I have not been home in like 3 weeks, so when I get home, I'll get a chance.
All right. Well, thanks, AJ. We always appreciate you taking the time.
Love the conversations.